Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Cookiecast. This is part 2 of my podcast with Donna Davies. This is a great little conversation. We got really into talking about vinyl, music, 70s music, the best music from the 70s. And a great little conversation about diet and exercise. I'm pretty sure there's even a cheeky impression in there somewhere. So join me and have a listen to Donna Davies on Cookiecast Part 2. So, something that I had a conversation, I did a podcast the other night, Paul, the legend Williams, who, you know Paul's brother.
James I do.
Come full circle on the podcast.
Yeah.
So he was around the other night and I had a conversation with him and I knew that you were coming today to do the podcast and I was like, I kind of had a little bit of a conversation with him, but I was kind of saving it because I was like, this is perfect for us to talk about. So I'm in Edinburgh the other day, mooching around because we had time to kill before getting the train back. Stumbled across a record shop, which I was like, oh, it's so cool to see that record shops are coming back. I then made the mistake of walking in through the door to be met by a sign next to a record player that said, "You're going to buy this record player." And it was like, what? Huh? Oh no, that's not what it says. It says this record player is a ridiculous price and you're gonna need to take one home with you. And I was like, oh man. So yeah, a little.
So did you buy any vinyl while you were in there?
Yeah. So what I call like a suitcase record player, I don't even know if that's even a thing.
I don't know whether they used to call them. I could be wrong, and you might have to get your phone out and check on internet. A Velocette, which many years ago, back in the 60s, I don't know when they first came out, but they were these quite, maybe about at least 12, could be 18 inches square, about 10 inches deep, and you could pile up your singles on them, and you'd have this little hook, and they'd just drop one after the other. Amazing. An amazing piece of technology of its time.
Yeah, definitely.
But for them to come out now, is that it just there?
That is just there.
And I've still got loads of vinyl at home. I've got some terrible vinyl, but I think I've also got some very good quality vinyl. And I almost started a conversation downstairs, but thought, no, I'm going to save it for this podcast.
It is the curse. I mean, me, you and Leanne were talking about the curse of the podcast, that now we're not allowed to talk about anything, especially just before a podcast. I was actually listening to, as I mentioned before, Joe Rogan. I was listening to him talking to somebody, and that was their conversation. They tried to have, or one of them tried to talk to the other one about something. They're like, no, save it for the podcast. And I've realised that this is now a thing. So no conversations ever happen anymore. I just make notes. Like, I'll try and have a conversation with someone, and instead of going, ooh, I just then write it down or put a note on my phone or something. So yeah, we're not allowed to talk about anything anymore unless it's with a microphone in front of us. So I was like, we could probably do an hour on vinyl,
right?
Because I know we've had many conversations, and I blame a friend of mine for this because I went to his house a couple of Saturdays ago, and he was, he made no attempt to hide the fact that basically I was going to his so that we could listen to vinyl, and he's always been into the vinyl.
But vinyl that is out now presumably will have a different quality to your itchy and scratchy type of vinyl that was out. So,
this is the second time I've had this conversation this week. So, I was saying to a mate of mine that, I was like, in Edinburgh, I bought a record player, bought some vinyl. He then launched into the "my word, you really are a hipster" rant that he usually does about various different things, and I was like, yeah. And I said the thing that he then went, oh god, everybody has to say that about vinyl. I was like, you put a particular piece of vinyl on and you listen to it and instantly you go, wow, it's like I'm hearing it for the first time. Especially if you originally heard it on CD or even digital, that, oh, okay, I'm hearing it and it's crisp and it's clean and it's because it's digital and it's over the airwaves and all this. And then you put it on vinyl and go, it's almost like I've never heard it before. So to answer your question, I bought 3 pieces of vinyl. 3 vinyls, whatever.
You bought an LP.
An LP.
A long player.
Yeah. And I've tortured various different people over the last few days going, so I bought 3 pieces of vinyl. Do you want to guess what they are? And going, think about what you have to own and these sort of things. So, one of them was from a second-hand record shop, and it was very much a second-hand vinyl. The other 2 were brand new in cellophane. So I bought, it was the best of Black Sabbath.
No, is this the original from the second-hand shop?
Yes.
We needed to have this conversation before. Only because
Go on.
I have all of Andy's old albums, and you can imagine what he was into. Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Motorhead. There's just loads of them in a cardboard box. They're not living in a box, they're living in a cardboard box. And I just was going to ask if you wanted to have a look through them.
And anything. Most definitely. I'll show you my Amazon basket, because my Amazon basket I feel is a little bit sacrilege at the moment, because it's got Led Zeppelin and stuff like that in it, but they'll be quote unquote brand new. And it's like, I don't know if I should be going to second-hand record shops and hunting these albums down. So I got Black Sabbath, and it was reduced because it should have been quite a bit more. And all it said on the label was, check the disc. So I was like, took it to the counter, and the guy was, have you checked the disc? And I was like, no. He's like, oh, you can see by the price. And I was like, oh, here we go. This is going to be, well, you see by the price that this is not going to play, because it was quite a lot cheaper than the other things in the same section. And he took it out, and I was like, wow. And he was like, basically, it's been well loved, it's been well played, and it was quite scratched. And I then said, is it going to play? And he was like, we wouldn't sell it if it wasn't going to play. It'll just have a bit of surface noise. But at the end of the day, it's been well loved, it's been well played. And I think that was the difference for me. I went, I'll take it.
And a little tip that you learn when you grow up with vinyl is that if it jumps a little bit under the needle, you just put a little penny or something on top of the head.
The head, yeah.
Stylus. And it will carry on through. Might sort of etch it all the way through. No, it doesn't. It just, nothing too heavy, but just enough to give it a bit of weight in, and it'll carry on through those scratches.
So when I went, because we'd seen the record player, we'd seen all the records and stuff, and then we went for a wander, because I was like, well, I don't want to be carrying a record player and vinyl around with me for the next couple of hours. And then we ended up in this other second-hand place, and I bought the Sabbath, because I was like, I don't think I can turn this down. It might not play as well as I'd like it to, but we'll see. The guy's saying it will. And the sleeve's tatty and it's battered and bruised, and it's all. I was like, yeah, this is the sort of thing.
Is there a date on the inner circle thing?
Probably. I'll have a look I'll have to have a look in a minute. So we went back to the shop. We've got the record player, and I was like, there's one there that I just have to have. And then I was saying to the guy, I was like, I kind of want a couple. I'm definitely going to take this. And he was like, at that price, you have to have that. And that's the first Rage Against the Machine album, which for me is just one of those albums that never get tired of listening. Like those films like Limitless, you can watch it again and again and again. Rage Against the Machine's first album, could just listen to that all day, every day, never get bored of it. And I was like, I kind of want something else to go with it. And I was like, have you got some of this? You got some of that? When we'd been in the first time, they had Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. And I was like, I'll get that. And then by the time we'd got back, it wasn't there anymore. I was like, damn it.
Oh, gosh.
So I was like, okay. And then I was just like, have you got any Creedence? He was like, yeah, I've got 2. And I was like, okay, now we're talking. He was like, I'll bring them forward in the section. And one I looked at, and it was that's quite a lot of money. But the other one, he was like, this one's actually really good value because it's cheaper, but it's live, and it was Creedence Clearwater Revival live in Europe, and it was 4 LPs and 4 sides, I should say, and it was cheaper, and I was like, that seems like a bit of a no-brainer to me, and I checked the track listing and stuff, and one of those things that I've always been a Creedence fan. My mother used to say to me, because you'll have heard that when you were little, like very little, and that probably just stuck with you for all those years, because
I had a reflective memory like that just very recently, having gone through a lot of mum and dad. My mum had a lot of the albums at her house, and Denise has been clearing the house. Connie Francis, an old 60s, 50s, 60s singer. But I put this album on with this track called Mr. Twister, and I was probably, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years old again. Sort of just dancing with my mum. But I wasn't, I was dancing on my own. But just listening to that music, it just takes you straight back to that moment. And that, obviously, on vinyl, played on my little vinyl record player, and it was lovely. It was scratched to death, but it still brought every little memory back.
Yeah, I mean, I got back from Edinburgh, record player under one arm, bags of vinyl. I so many varying different memories of that image, that bag of vinyl. Again, a long thing, probably too long to go through on this particular podcast. But yeah, that image of that bag of vinyl. And so I got back and tried to work out how to plug in, because inevitably these days you've never got enough wire for your plug, because your plugs out. This room that we're in now, and where everything's plugged in, has one plug. And as you can see, that one plug has got an extension plugged into it, that's got an extension plugged into it, and that extension holds 10 plugs, and it's still
Is that the one smoking in the corner?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's okay because I just plug more things into it. I nearly considered plugging another extension in, going, it'll be fine. 3 extensions is okay. But between me and the lovely Leanne, we managed to just about get it plugged in. The cord, you can see the cord stretching across the back of the room. And I had it in my head that I was like, I'm going to listen to this, and I'm going to listen to this. And I was like saving the Creedence. I was saving that. I was like, I'm going to listen to Sabbath, I'm going to listen to Rage Against the Machine, and then I'm going to listen to Creedence. And I was like, oh, put this Sabbath on and see if it actually plays. Put it on, put the needle on, waited for those first few seconds, waiting for the needle to pick up. And it started playing, and it was that. Wow. It was like I'd never heard that sound, that piece of music, that song ever. And I was trying to explain this to my mate who's going, you're just a hipster. And it's like, you can understand the sound. I've heard that song hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times before, but until that point in time, it's like I'd never heard it. And I was thinking about it today because I knew we were going to be doing this podcast this evening, and I'd been writing up like show notes and like doing various other things, and I feel I feel like the guy that's turning up and going, "Oh, have you ever heard of this band called Black Sabbath?" That's what I feel like at the moment, because I feel like I've discovered this new musical form, this new band, and I'm there going, "Have you ever heard of Black Sabbath? They do this song called," and I'm like, "Well,
can I
no.
tell you a Black Sabbath story?"
Yeah, go for it.
My sister, my eldest sister, I would have been 12. My eldest sister would have been 17. Had bought Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath? Or Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath. Mm-hmm. And the album that she had one of them, it was a cream middle with a black and white spiral. So as it sort of went round on the record player, you got hypnotised by this black and white spiral. And she didn't ask, she made me and my other sisters come into the room. She turned all the lights out apart from maybe a small lamp, and she put on the, probably is Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, where it starts off with a thunderstorm, and probably put the fear of God into all of us, but made us listen to this song. And it was, I mean, to sort of still have that memory of Sabbath now, but being 12 years old and listening to it when it first came out as an album, probably.
And this is actually something that sparked and like this resurgence for me. At this point in time, I'm trying to work out which of the 3 stories in my head I'm going to try and get out. So I'll go with the first one. So the reason that all this has come up recently was, as I said, I went to a friend's and he was like, "We're going to listen to vinyl." And I was like, "Okay, that's fine." He's into death metal, so I was a bit like, death metal, an entire evening of death metal, that's going to be awesome. Because for me, death metal, I love the music, but the quote-unquote singing, not a huge fan of, because it's more screaming than singing, and people refer
very guttural.
Yeah, people refer to the music I listen to as screamy, shouty music, and I'm like, let me introduce you to some screamy, shouty music. But I think because of the fact that it was like, oh, come around and listen to vinyl, he'd sort of catered to my needs and started putting on stuff that he knew I was into. I'm a huge Wild Hearts fan, and he just kept putting all these like random bits of Wild Hearts vinyl on, and I was in heaven. And then he put Black Sabbath album on, and he was like, "Do you know when this album was released?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to go with like 78 or something." And he was like, "Yeah, this album's 48 years old because it was released in 1970. And I was like, "Oh, wow." It's like, and when he said, "So for you and I, this is the closest we would ever get to hearing it at that time, because it was it's original vinyl," and that thought of going, wow, and listening to it and hearing it, and I think going back to what you were saying is the Creedence one, I had to take it out of the cellophane. So I feel like that little bit of fraud going on. Whereas the Black Sabbath one, it was battered, it was bruised, but it played and it gave that sound of when it was originally recorded. And that, I mean, I've listened to it a good few times since getting it on like Wednesday. And I just keep like, I'll listen to one side, flip it over, listen to the other side, flip it over again. Like last night, I was in here and that's all I was doing, just flip it over, flip it over, flip it over. And just keep listening to it and going, wow, I haven't heard this before, but I heard it, a matter of minutes ago. And each time it seems like it's like I'm hearing it for the first time. Yeah. So, one of the questions I was going to say to you, because I remember vinyl, my dad and vinyl went hand in hand. My bedroom was populated with shelf after shelf after shelf of vinyl, and then CDs came along and he made that jump to CDs, and it was CD, and the vinyl sort of was phased out, and we all moved with the times, and I think there's 2 groups of people, 2 maybe 3 groups of people now. The people that had the vinyl and kept it, the people that had the vinyl got rid of it and are rebuying it, and the people that had the vinyl got rid of it and went, vinyl's dead. And I know that there's those people that just keep saying, like, I've got a mate I work with, and his response to any mention of vinyl is, I'm glad I kept all my vinyl. Bless you.
Thanks.
So, did you have the vinyl, get rid of the vinyl?
I've had vinyl and always hung on to it, and sometimes considered quite seriously getting rid of it, and then just thought, it's quite a pull. I do tend to hang on to things anyway, but vinyl is just something different. And then obviously Leanne bought me the record player a couple of years ago, and the very first single I ever played on that little record player was the very first single that I ever bought when I was 11 years old. And it was T-Rex Hot Love.
Oh, wow.
So I've still got that single, and I played it on that record player. But and I've still got quite a few singles that are favourites that I hung on to. When I was married to Leanne's dad, we used to buy singles, music. We lived in Germany, so there wasn't very much television, and again, music was just something that was really a key element of our life. And we would go and just sort of try and buy whatever was popular. We were probably buying a single a week, really. And our music choices were quite eclectic. I do like that word. Not a lot of people do, but I think it describes the choices of music very well. And it was anything from disco funk, for instance, Unlock the Funk by Locksmith, to not full punk, but The Clash,
Right.
London Calling.
Yeah.
And we probably could buy those records within a few weeks of each other because it was what was popular at the time.
Right.
We were probably, both of us, my dad might not thank me for saying this, but we were disco divas. And we used to go out on a Saturday night to watch a DJ sort of leave the barrack environment that we were in. This was obviously before Leanne was born, and travel maybe about 20 or 30 miles knowing that this DJ would be on who was playing all of the popular disco music of the times. And they're real fun memories, actually. But yeah, it's music has always been a huge part of my life, and vinyl has been a big part of it as well. So no, even my Womblin album, I've still got it there. I could never get rid of it.
Do you now secretly laugh at all the people like me that are now scrabbling around for vinyl?
No, I love it that it has done that. And it happens throughout life. What goes around comes around.
It is painful.
Vinyl will keep going round.
When I was sat in a Nero's in Edinburgh, and I was like, oh, well, what vinyl can I get hold of? And like I mentioned earlier, big Wild Hearts fan, so I Googled Wild Hearts vinyl, stupidly knowing that there's no chance because the early Wild Hearts albums were deleted and then later re-released, and that was on CD. I knew that they were available. Like I say, I was at my mate's house, we were listening to Wild Hearts vinyl. I knew that they were at some point available on vinyl, but I knew what was going to come back. And I think when I found somebody selling Earth versus the Wild Hearts on eBay for £250, I was like, I'm just going to stop there because it's just going to be painful. And then the same mate texted me today saying that he'd managed to pick up a Wild Hearts single on vinyl today. And I was like, oh man, I was like, how much did you pay for that then? He was like, oh, it was all right. And he paid £11 for it. I was like, damn it.
£11 for a single.
Yeah.
And this might not have any... it's trying to put something into perspective. My first single, Hot Love, cost me 50 new pence. We had only just stepped out of the old into the new money.
Right.
And I can't even tell you what 50 pence might have been worth. I can't remember. That's terrible.
Oh, excuse me.
When I remember, I'll tell you.
Oh, I've got a tickle onion drink. So something that you and I have spoken about a lot, and it's something that I can't explain it, but I'll break it down. Music from the 70s. So something that has stuck with me for a really long time now. Jack Black was in a video game, which the name of which escapes me at the moment. I'll probably Google it shortly. And in the intro cutscene, there's a bit where he plays a roadie, and he's having a conversation with another roadie. And they're watching the band that's on stage, and the band that's on stage that they are roadieing for is awful. It's like one of these new era metal bands, like a load of kids trying to, with the hair and the black eyeliner and all of that. And he's talking in disgust of this music that's currently on stage, and he turns to this other roadie and he's like, "Do you ever feel like you were born in the wrong era of music?" And he was like, "Yeah, the 70s, man." And Jack Black's like, "No, the early 70s." And it just stuck with me and I don't, especially at the time that I saw it, I don't really know why that stuck with me as that phrase until the last few years, where I was very much a 80s music child and a 90s music teenager. And Chris Rock had this theory about music that you carry with you and why, and I'll spare you the details of that. So for me, 90s heavy metal, unfortunately, became branded as new metal, and that was my genre of music for the 90s. And I carried that with me. If somebody said, "Stick some music on," chances are it's going to be something out of the 90s in a heavy metal genre. But over the last few years, because the 90s metal came and went, it's not like those bands are so much actively producing music now. There are still bands going from that time, and they are still producing music, but you might get 4 albums in a year if you're really lucky. My favourite band's Metallica, and it's like, well, will we see one this decade? It's only 8 years since your last album, sort of thing. So this sort of thing started happening where I'd hear a piece of music that, again, I'd heard many times before over many years, but almost like I was hearing it for the first time and going, "Oh, I've heard that before, but I really like it this time." Oh, when's it from? What is it? When's it from? Just tracing it back, and it's this piece of music from this point in time, and every single time it was a piece of music from the 70s. So I'd be like, "Oh, that's that," and it's from this person, from the 70s every time. And my go-to phrase at the moment is somebody...
Let's go to the 70s.
Yeah, somebody firmly put my musical vehicle in reverse and floored it all the way back to the 70s. And I'm just like, anything from the 70s now, that's what I'm sort of...
Well, I know, and I mean, you've probably even turned Leanne back around, and I used to play music to Leanne. And sometimes, I mean, you've already asked me the question about Leanne at the beginning, but sometimes I think, is she really my child? Because she just doesn't understand music the same as... She never had that appreciation. And I don't know what... But you can't force that on somebody.
It's strange to hear you say that, because me and Leanne, our relationship, in a lot of ways, blossomed through music. We had the almost exact same musical tastes. She was a huge Nirvana fan, and I had a huge hatred of Nirvana.
Right.
And there was a Placebo, which I took great pleasure in saying to her, "What, Placebo?" And that would drive her up the wall, and that would make me happy, and that was fine. Other than that, I mean, I just remember, like, times of sitting in her bedroom at your house, listening to all these various bands and sitting there going, but I like this, and you can't have heard of this band because I'm the only person that's heard of this band, and realising that we had that musical interest and the same stuff.
Well, growing in Leanne's more sort of formative years, if you like, any child, I'm generalising possibly, but even when I was young, Christmas used to be a vinyl album, a book, an annual, and then something you particularly had asked for or really wanted, and just a selection of other things. I could not buy music for Leanne for love or money. Every year, it be her birthday or Christmas, do you want me to buy you? Is there anybody that you like listening to? No. And I don't know at what point, I don't even know whether I did buy her first piece of music, if I'm honest. I did buy her a tape of Bros, only because I thought everybody else of her age is listening to this. Yeah. I feel she should have it. I don't even know what happened to that tape, and
She's mentioned that to me before, so I'm sure there is something there. It's weird you say that, because I was almost the opposite. I asked for music for birthdays and Christmas. I remember I so desperately wanted Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, Guns N' Roses. And I was just like, that's all I wanted for that Christmas. And I got them, but they were like copies, like tape copies. And I was like, okay, well, I got what I wanted, but I wanted like the proper bought tapes. And it was like, well, it's still the right thing, but it's the wrong thing, but the right thing. And then I realised that it didn't matter in the slightest, because I could literally go into a room, put that tape in the tape deck and press play and listen to the music that I wanted to listen to. And that then made everything okay. But yeah, I asked for music.
Well, going back to sort of Big Christmas and you'd get an album, and going back to the music of the 70s, which obviously I grew up with, I would never have said particularly that I was a rebellious child. I think I was anything but. However, I was not a David Cassidy fan. I was not a Donny Osmond fan. I was Mark Bolan, David Bowie, something slightly more. They were rebellious, I suppose. Diamond Dogs was the album that everybody was getting, and probably the album that I would have loved to have had, or Electric Warrior. And I got the Osmonds. And as a 12-year-old girl who wanted to listen to Bowie and T-Rex, to get the Osmonds was not probably... I'm not saying I was ungrateful. It had Crazy Horses on it. Crazy Horses is a great track. And even now, if you listen to it, it's probably still a great track.
It is a great track.
I can't remember what else was on that album, because I don't think it got the play that it probably deserved of the time.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been there. I'd inherited some CDs that, when I years later look back, I was like, oh, those are the ones that my dad didn't want when he was leaving. Right, okay. And I really tried Dave Lee Roth album, which I still own, which I think there was one track on there that I could happily listen to, and the rest I was like, I don't know what this music is.
What band was he out of?
Was he Van Halen?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
Then,
I could solo.
I was singing Maxwell. I always call this song Maxwell Jump. And it isn't that at all. It's Might As Well Jump. But for me, I have always sang Maxwell Jump. Maxwell Jump. Might as well jump.
Going back to you versus Leanne for the music side thing, I think there's been like 2 occasions in the last sort of year or so that you've been shocked getting into Leanne's car. One was when you got in and it was like, are you listening to Bowie? She was like, yeah. Why? I like it.
Yeah.
What? Which I imagine was a moment to be proud.
Indeed it was.
Versus getting into the car, sitting there for a moment and going, what are you listening to? This is the Pitch Perfect soundtrack. Why?
and I wouldn't have even known that.
I was just sitting there. this is a subject that has already come up, and I got it out there early. It's my fault that she got into the Pitch Perfect stuff, but not my fault. It was my sister and some people.
But having since explained that it's a cappella,
yeah,
it makes a lot of difference knowing that those individuals are creating that music through their own.
I think you would enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm sure that I would.
One of the things that I did look at in the record shop, and you know, when you go, I should have budgeted for that, because now I've already looked it up on Amazon going, I'm probably going to have to buy that at some point. They had a soundtrack section, which had various different things. Aliens, I think there was an Indiana Jones, both of the Guardians of the Galaxy, the Stranger Things soundtrack and stuff. But tucked away in the B's was the Baby Driver soundtrack.
Yeah, see, if you hadn't have suggested that just then, I would have done, because going back to films and soundtracks, and I know that we have had this conversation before, that whole putting together, because I think we probably both agree that film has been put to that soundtrack as opposed
Not
to the
other way around.
soundtrack put into the... And that is just what is so incredible about that film. But when you first mentioned the film to me, have I ever heard of this film, Baby Driver, it immediately brought up that song.
Yeah.
From the depths of my memory, which I then had to message you with all of the details, which I hadn't even Googled. It was that recall. I can do it with old music.
It was that thing that I sat down, I really wanted to see that film. That was one of 3 films that I really wanted to see last year. Baby Driver, Atomic Blonde, which is still sitting in that pile over there, unwatched, because I really wanted to see it, but I haven't watched it yet. And the other one was a film called American Assassins, which is currently sitting in my Amazon basket that I'll eventually go, I'll get that because I've got some spare money. But Baby Driver, I was like, I have to see this film. Every trailer I saw, it's Edgar Wright. It looked like a great combination. Jamie Foxx, the guy from Mad Men, John Hamm. Yeah.
I still don't see him quite in that role. But anyway, that's only because I used to watch Mad Men.
Yeah, I knew I had to see that film, so I got it. I put it on. I'm not a cinema goer as such, although I am planning 2 trips to the cinema. But I'm a Blu-ray guy. I get the Blu-ray. I've got the big TV. I've got the surround sound. I stick it on. I watch it. Great. And I think I must have been 10 minutes into that film going, you know who would love this movie? Leanne's mum.
And you saying having the surround sound, I don't know what Blu-ray does to a DVD. I don't think I've ever seen one. But you could really immerse yourself into that film because of the music and how every move is choreographed to that soundtrack.
Yeah.
Just... Yeah, as films go, that's probably one of my most recent favourites. Why didn't I mention that before?
It's a standout movie, I think, is the way because if somebody said to me, give me your top 3 favourite films in the last year, Baby Driver's going to be way up there, probably in the number 1 slot, for so many different reasons. I think I've said to you a few times through this process that there's probably things that we could do a whole podcast on, and that film is probably one of those things. I think we could literally sit for an hour and talk about that film. I'm pretty sure we have on various different occasions. If you had to sort of give me a recommendation of the one thing that I should spend my time hunting down as 70s vinyl.
Of something that maybe you've never listened to, or
like
just as a something different experience of music?
Like the definitive 70s vinyl.
Gosh.
Like you've stumbled across a record shop that's down an alleyway that nobody's been in for a month, but it's got absolutely everything. And why doesn't anybody go in? Because nobody knows it's there. And deep at the back of the shop is that one thing that somebody wants £6 for that they should be charging £60 for, and what's that one?
This is such a difficult question because there were so many different styles of music, and obviously we're all into different ones, and it's only as I've got older that I've become have a greater understanding of what people were listening to. And I'm going to put a name out there that I possibly haven't really listened to myself, and I know that you're sort of quite into your musicians and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I would possibly, and I don't even know why I'm saying this, is a Steely Dan. Have you ever listened to anything by Steely Dan?
One of those things that the name, I know the name well.
So do I, and I've never actually listened to anything by them.
And that's the thing. I couldn't tell you. There's a lot of stuff. I was having a conversation with a guy at work, and he was trying to guess the 3 vinyl that I bought. And he was like, oh, Zeppelin. And I was like, I looked at Zeppelin, but I didn't buy any. And there's a reason for that. And then he was like, oh, Pink Floyd. And I was like, I looked at Pink Floyd, but I didn't buy any. And there's a reason for that. And the reason that I didn't buy any Zeppelin and I didn't buy any Pink Floyd is the same reason. Because I don't know what I'm looking for.
Right.
So I know that there are certain Zeppelin songs that you should be looking for, and I know I will know them when I hear them. But holding that record and that sleeve in my hand, reading the names, going, I don't know what that sounds like. Is that the one? Is that the really good one that I know that's by Zeppelin? And Pink Floyd, everyone's like, you need to own The Wall or Dark Side of the Moon, the whole Wizard of Oz thing. I remember the Wizard of Oz craze in the 90s. Everybody says Dark Side of the Moon and stuff like that, but...
And I, to be honest, I've never listened to Steely Dan, and I probably, if I heard a track, I would know it was them, but I couldn't quote you one at the moment. But it's just a lot of friends that I have that play in bands, often on Facebook, will say, oh, album of the week, from whenever, and Steely Dan is one that tends to crop up. Aside from them, somebody that you would be familiar with would be Free.
Yeah.
Paul Rodgers,
mm-hmm.
Or Bad Company. And either or, because Paul Rodgers was with both Free and Bad Company. And I'd watched a documentary I don't know, quite a while ago on one of the art channels about sort of how they came about and the continuum of them. And yeah, their music. But I think it's very dependent on the style of music you're looking for, because they're very blues rock. And it's not... It's probably they're more that progression from the rock and roll bluesy music of the 60s coming into the 70s. Led Zeppelin were also blues rock, but with a more progressive sound. So and Pink Floyd, definitely progressive music, which Emerson, Lake and Palmer, they were bringing something very different into the 70s sound. So the early 70s was sort of coming, the sort of 60s into the 70s was very much a blues rock sound. And then you had all of the glam rock coming into it. So you've got Slade, which you've maybe never listened to, Sweet, and Mud, and Shawaddy Waddy are not bands that I would say, oh, you need to listen to these, but they were a huge part of the 70s. Slade were a little bit more of your rocky sort of music, not even a soft rock. But if I was going to say listen to something from the 70s, Slade are probably a band I would recommend. But then you had like Led Zeppelin coming through the 70s, bringing this sort of different element. I mean, we've all got a different view of what music should sound like or what should be played within something, but a lot of them were sort of experimenting, I suppose, with sound, which is... Jazz is something that I would say I would never listen to, but there's actually a lot of jazz music out there that I do like, and again, they're using experimentation of music. And another band, which I haven't really listened to myself, and I think I should, is somebody called Captain Beefheart.
Oh, yeah.
And probably, again, slightly experimentation, and they sort of do their music slightly more poetically, if you like. I mean, one of my favourites, and I don't even know, I can't say that they came into the 70s because I think he died quite early on. But certainly late 60s, very early 70s would have been The Doors.
Yeah.
If you haven't listened to The Doors, then I'm sorry, I'm stepping away from this podcast now.
Riders on the Storm.
Yeah, there is more to Jim Morrison. But yeah, I think probably Free, but they are quite a genteel type because it's blues. But if you like Creedence, then you're gonna that's got a blues country sound to it.
Okay. I will check out your recommendation.
And I'm sure that I will have a lot of these on vinyl at home.
Then I will be round tomorrow. So what we'll do is we'll nicely segue into talking about diets and exercise. Because,
Okay.
you know, they're just flow nicely
Well, they
together.
do, because dancing keeps you extremely fit. Music keeps you on a very good harmonious level. So it all comes into the health.
I had several cups of coffee with a woman I used to work with yesterday, who informed me that she's going to be 70 in 2 weeks' time.
Gosh.
And then informed me that the night before she was out at this show that she goes to every year, dancing in the aisles, and she was telling me that she was off to she'd been to a Tai Chi class and all of these things. She's reading a book about 10 ways to stay healthy in old age or older age. But when she said that she was going to be 70 in 2 weeks, I was like, wow. And I've known this woman for just short of 20 years. And she will always be the same age. She'll be that age that I met her at. So when she was like, 70 in 2 weeks, I was like, huh? What?
And for her age, I know you've known her a long time, so I suppose sometimes we get a bit complacent as we look at people, but has she looked after herself?
Oh, definitely. She's, her sort of mentality reminds me a lot of my granddad. He was very much stay active and you'll keep going, you know. He was very much like, I wouldn't say a hiker, more a walker. We'd go to places and we'd walk and it would be up hills. And I remember being very little and being physically dragged up these hills. And then years later realising that if you just walked, it was less painful. And his sort of mentality was stay active. He swam a lot. He walked a lot. He kept active. And that was his sort of philosophy around keeping fit and well and healthy and stuff. And she reminds me of that. She reminds me of that mentality. Stay healthy, stay active, and keep going. And she looks amazing for her age. And like I say, she was relaying all this stuff that she was doing. And at one point, she was telling me she was changing a starter motor on something. It sounded like she's got maybe an automatic garage door. And she was telling me she was changing the starter motor and she'd been taking child gate off a thing and then had to decorate because it had taken some of the paint off. And I'm like, well, you're certainly keeping busy. So diet and exercise is a section that I'm pretty sure I've explained it to every single person that's been on. But 3 years ago now, when I decided it was time to do something about the fact I was carrying a lot of extra weight, what I find quite comforting was that Bill Burr, I listened to his podcast and I was listening to it twice a week. He did this thing where he was talking about the fact that he was trying to lose weight because he felt that he'd got a little bit overweight. And gave this sort of like twice a week, every podcast was saying, oh, and I had a little bit of a slip up this week and I ate a pizza, and he'd just go on about what he was doing and what exercises he was doing and how he was working out and what he wasn't eating and how much he was drinking and all of this stuff, and it really helped. And then recently I've heard, again, it was Bill Burr talking to a drummer and saying to him, oh, you're in great shape and this. And I was in the gym listening to somebody that I listen to all the time, talking to somebody about how they kept fit and healthy. And I was like, oh, it sort of reinvigorated my sort of diet and exercise. Talking on a podcast is quite useful because somebody might be listening to it in the gym and they're trying to stay on track and they didn't want to go to the gym that day and they've eaten something they shouldn't, and then they hear somebody say, oh man, I'll tell you something, I slipped up, I had a piece of cake, and then I went to the gym and I phoned it in because I just couldn't be bothered, and now I regret it, but there's always tomorrow. So everybody that's been on so far, I sort of go with, do you consider yourself to be actively on a diet?
I think my whole life is a diet. I don't mean that. I know, I'll put my hand on my heart and say I probably don't need to diet. However, if I eat, I always have a guilt that I've eaten something if I haven't exercised. So I don't have a very good attitude towards food and keeping fit. And I don't know where that's particularly stemmed from. I suppose to a degree I would class it as an eating disorder, but not to the extent that it's ever made me ill. But mentally I do have issues with food, and I do eat a lot of rubbish, but I try to have a balance of through the week. I'll try and eat healthy. Mm-hmm. So I have a very healthy breakfast of a homemade muesli, porridge oats, sunflower seeds, flax seeds, ground nuts, fresh fruit, and then milk. And that bowl on a morning, it's like, how am I ever going to get through all of this? But it does sustain me. I might have a banana mid-morning, but it sustains me for 5 hours, if not longer. And then I might sort of try and do a fruit smoothie or make a wholesome soup for my tea. But I think just it's that a lot of people think that I don't eat well because I'm not eating solid foods, perhaps. I'm not having a meat, 3 veg and potato on a plate meal, but I am still eating all of those vegetables, and I put a lot of ginger into my meals, turmeric whenever I can, because those spices are really good for fighting the body's within as opposed to without.
Turmeric's good for, is it 220 different ailments?
I'm not sure, but it is great.
It's good for you, I know.
It's great in a mug of hot cocoa.
I cannot imagine
that is a balance.
To be fair, I added turmeric into my diet. I consider myself to be in the second portion of my workout craze. I was doing a lot better previously. I was at a different gym. I certainly felt the workout a lot more from that gym because it was a lot more free weights, more bars that you load weights onto, less machines.
Right, yeah.
Whereas the gym I'm at now, it's the opposite. It's more machines, less free weights, and I don't feel the workout as much. When I was at the old gym, it was very much if I don't have a protein shake, I might not be able to move. Whereas now I have a protein shake because I'm supposed to, not because I need to. But at the last gym, when I was in my last sort of workout craze, it was amino acids with meals, vitamins, vitamin D, zinc, magnesium at tea time, and turmeric on, I'd put it on a salad, I'd put it in stuff and things like that for various different reasons. I was having peppercorns, black peppercorns with the turmeric because it increases the absorption rate by 2,000%. These were all the interesting little facts I used to know back in those days.
And that's it. I think once you start sort of trying to improve a certain element of your life, it naturally takes you down another avenue where it brings other sort of positive improvements into your life as well. I probably have made a lot of excuses. I've had a very challenging year, and during that year I've had to be on a particular type of medication which I haven't felt comfortable about taking, and also it can increase your weight, but I can't use that medication as an excuse if I'm eating more rubbish, because obviously the rubbish that I'm eating will also increase my weight. But I think a lot of what I've been doing, because of everything that's happened, has been a little bit of comfort eating. And so I'm allowing myself Easter, and then as of just after Easter into April, I'm going to give myself this fresh, healthy start and see whether I can I don't need to lose the weight, I know that, I just need to do it for my own self-comfort.
Yeah.
I keep seeing an advert which possibly would have been yourself, Cookie, and it keeps saying something like, I lost 7 stone in 35 weeks. And all I want to do is lose £7 in about 35 days. And sometimes that £7, and you probably know yourself, you get to that plateau point where that little bit of weight that you do want to lose is so hard to sort of just shake off. And I think as we get a little bit older, and obviously you're not my age, so I can maybe make allowances that I need to carry a little bit of weight just for protection purposes, and this is why the body does certain things at certain times of your life.
Yeah.
But that still doesn't make me feel comfortable about the few extra pounds that I might be carrying, so I can shift them. I just need to get my head into that right space and commit to it. I think also, going back to sort of diet and exercise, when we're carrying a lot of stress, we eat to sort of, I don't know,
counteract the stress.
Yeah, to give ourselves a little bit of a feel-good factor.
The one phrase I have used far too much in the last 6 months is it's called comfort food for a reason.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to move away from that.
And that's what I think I need to do. And it's not going to change everything that's happened, and some of the things that have happened have been devastating. But I know that I've still, for instance, my mum wouldn't want me to sort of sit there at home locked away with a barrel of biscuits when she knew that I used to be an avid person that went out exercising regularly. And what I really want to do is learn how to dance properly. I love dancing, and I can dance, but I'm very freestyle. Dance is an art form after all, so that's my creativity coming out. But I want to learn to dance properly as a memory to my mum, and I need to be in the right place to do that, but I've been suffering with piriformis syndrome, which has really impeded any kind of exercise that I might want to do, but I've then used that as an excuse not to do anything. Although I have tried to overcome it I've not taken medication. I've taken an occasional painkiller when it's really got to a point where I haven't been able to sleep, but I've gone and I've had physio, I've had massage, I've gone swimming, I've walked, and I've also had counselling, because I think sometimes where we carry these stresses, we don't just carry them as, oh, I'm stressed because this has happened. Our body is carrying that stress somewhere, and for me it's my lower back. So every time I've gone and I've spoken to a counsellor, and I'm not saying it works for everybody, but it's alleviated some of the discomfort that I've felt. And obviously during that time as well, I've been doing the physio stretches, I've had the massages, I've been going out and doing gentle exercise. I'm helping to sort of repair the damage that is there. But all of these things are helping with the stress. And I always say diet obviously is very important. But if we can get our head in the right place, the body will follow.
Yeah.
We've just got to get our head to the place it needs to be.
It's the mind over matter stuff, and
it is, and it's easy sometimes to say that, and nobody's going to say it's not a miracle, it's not an overnight event that will, right, my head's in the right place, this is just suddenly going to drop off me. No. But once we get our head into that place where we think, right, I can do this and I can build up to it, then hopefully everything will just pop into place with it.
The conversation that me and Leanne had on the first podcast was very much that. It was, if your head isn't in the right place, you're already
in the wrong place,
doomed to failure. It's got to start with the head, because it's not your body that ever lets you down. It's not, you're not sat watching TV and then you going, where did this biscuit come from? What have you done to me, hand? You put this biscuit in my mouth. Yeah. It's a conscious decision to make where you go, I'm feeling quite down, and what's going to make me feel better is to put this biscuit in my mouth.
Yeah.
And the irony is that it's actually the opposite, because chances are you're going to feel worse for doing that.
And it's so much easier to go and eat a biscuit than it is to think about getting up and running for a mile.
Yeah.
And so throughout life, I think, probably in going back to the potentials that we could reach throughout life, I think we don't have to, but we choose to take the easy option.
Yeah.
And sometimes taking that more difficult option can reap much more healthier benefits. And that sense of achievement. And again, going back to yourself, fantastic sense of achievement when you lost all of your weight and you're still continuing. And I know that sometimes you feel like you're plateauing, but you've still achieved an enormous amount, and your head has been in the right place. And because you know that it's been in the right place at that time will come round again.
Yeah, but I'm trying to get back to that place, and the conversation that I had with Leanne was very much what I said was, I go to the gym 5 times a week. I am in the gym on average over an hour when I'm there. I do 2 lots of cardio, and then it's weights, and I'm always increasing the weight. I'm always pushing the boundaries of what I can do to try and get stronger. And I'm not going to lie, to try and build muscle, to get bigger in that sense. And all that's great, and if anybody else was going to the gym 5 times a week and probably doing those things that I spoke of, 2 lots of cardio and lifting a lot of weights, they'd look great. But where I let all of that down is by going, I'm not going to eat the right thing at the right time, and I'm probably going to eat the wrong thing at the wrong time. And, there's times when I do think, I could have saved myself all the time, not eaten that and not gone to the gym, and ended up with the same effect. That kind of, why am I doing the 2 things? It should be one or the other.
But I think the gym sometimes isn't just about how you can change yourself physically. It's the mental aspect. It's the endorphins that just naturally make you feel better.
Yeah, especially recently, I've been going to the gym for the mental side of it, for that, just thrashing out the demons in the gym sort of thing. And there are times when I know that I'm going to the gym not for anything to lose weight or to build muscle, to get my head straight.
Yeah.
To have that readjustment of the mind. And that, especially more recently, going into the gym and going, I don't know if I remember getting here. I don't know if I remember that mile I did on the treadmill, or if I remember lifting those weights. But I remember that my head was a mess when I walked in, and it's not as much of a mess now. So yeah, it's mind, it's body, it's the ideal situation is putting the two together, which is rarely the case.
Diet and exercise are very personal anyway, aren't they? Because you can get somebody that can eat whatever they want, whenever they want, and they don't have to exercise. And then they're just that's who they are. It's all about our own natural metabolic rate, and some of us just have to work that little bit harder, but and it's how we perceive ourselves. And my biggest problem probably is that I have body dysmorphia, but again, that's come from somewhere suppressed within me, and I just don't see myself as other people see me. But I do enjoy exercise. I've done extremes of exercise in the past. Probably a little bit like you. I'd sometimes go to the gym twice a day, and I would probably spend an hour and a half there each time, and it became an outlet for Leanne was that bit older when, for instance, her father and I separated. And I needed something to sort of fill my time, and that was a good stopgap. And then all of a sudden it just takes over your life. But I do enjoy exercise, and I don't enjoy my life when I can't exercise.
That is a concept for me that is weird, only because there was a time in my life where I hated all forms of any sort of exercise, but relied solely on the fact that I used to walk 14, 15 miles a day and would just burn through anything I put into my body, and that was fine. But the idea of exercise, I was like, didn't want to do it, and the thought of it was like, oh God. And then I reached the point where, like, the running was a difficult thing, because people would say, oh, enjoy your run. And I'd be like, what? Are you mental? You can't enjoy a run. It's pain from the minute it starts and the minute it ends. It's awful. Nobody ever enjoys it. And I know that there are people that do truly enjoy it, but I wasn't one of them. And then going to the gym, oh, enjoy your workout. And that was the time for me where I was like, oh, what do you mean enjoy your workout? I mean, I do enjoy that bit, but I don't enjoy that. But I do enjoy that bit on the other hand. And the realisation of having that feeling where if ever there was a time that I couldn't go to the gym and I couldn't work out, the first day is fine because I take rest days. The second day is okay because sometimes I take 2 rest days together. By about day 3... I'm like, what is this I'm feeling? What is this? I feel like a caged animal. Day 4 comes around and I'm like, I need to lift something. I need to pick something up that's heavier than just a cup of coffee or something. And I'd never experienced anything like that. I'd never had that. I need to work out. I need to lift heavy weights. I need to be in the gym. And it was such an alien concept for me. But now I understand it and go, it helps go into the gym. It helps with the go into the gym. Because previously, going back years probably, I'd have gone, oh, I'll go to the gym on Monday. And then, oh, I'm going to go on Tuesday. But then the next time I'd be in the gym would be Friday. And go, oh, well, I had that thing that I probably didn't really have. But now... I'm like, my goals for this year, not so much a New Year's resolution, but my goal for January was to be on the wall on the gym, at the gym for one of the people that had been the most, and I achieved it. And then I was like, well, February's a shorter month. Can I do it again? And I achieved it. And not only that, I was 10th out of 10 people in January. I was 5th out of 10 people in February. And I was like, yeah. March is coming around. I've missed a couple of days, even though whilst in Edinburgh I went to the gym twice. I was there like 18 hours or something. I went to the gym twice while I was there. But that's 2 times that I didn't go to my gym, so I've missed those 2 days. So, will he make it on the wall this month? But yeah, that concept of what is this I'm feeling? I'd never experienced that. It was just such a weird experience. Again, a complete change of subject. If I was to say to you, what's your think mastermind? What's your specialist subject? What would that be? And at this point in time, I won't tell you how long we've been doing this podcast. At this point in time, have we covered your specialist subject, or would it be something completely different to anything we've talked about?
Again, I think I might struggle to answer that. Obviously touching on diet and exercise, and within that I do the holistic therapies, and I know quite a lot about how the body will react to certain things, and obviously, again, trying to get your head in the right place and the body will follow, naturally incorporates all like the therapies of reflexology, Reiki, any kind of a massage, then that could be a specialist subject. I used to have an incredible knowledge of music that was sort of pre-80s. I don't think I know anything post-80s. But I feel like I probably know a little bit about a lot of things as opposed to a lot about one thing in particular.
That jack of all trades kind of thing.
Master of none.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes there's nothing wrong with that, because that possibly makes me slightly learned, maybe a wise woman.
Those are the people you want on your quiz team.
Quite possibly.
That's, if you were building a quiz team, you'd want people that know stuff about a variety of things, especially if you're going into general knowledge. I remember years and years and years ago, me and Leanne went to a film quiz that was run by a friend of ours at Borders. That shows how long ago it was.
Yeah.
And we went to this film quiz because I thought that I knew a lot about films. And we went to this film quiz and we sat down, and I was looking around, checking out the competition. I was like, these guys and these guys, okay. I think we can win this. We'll be fine. I know about films. And the first question came up and I was like, oh my word, what is this? I've never heard of that film. And it was an education in you don't know anything. I think I answered 2 questions out of what was probably 20, 25 questions. And I answered 2 knowing the answers, and the rest I was like, I don't know. I've no idea.
So what were those sort of questions? And having done that and realised that... Because your knowledge of films, directors who might have written the music, is much broader than mine.
My knowledge used to be a lot more than it is now. I had to let a lot of that knowledge go because I realised it was basically like useless information. I was carrying around all this knowledge about films and nobody cared, and I was like, I'm going to let some of it go. I'm going to keep hold of the important stuff, but I think it's time to let some of this go. But yeah, the questions were like, in the 1974 film whatever directed by this person, who was the key grip? And I'm like, what? That film came out 6 years before I was born. I've never heard of it. And what? Is that an actual question? What? It was that level. My mate Miles, who I'm working up to sort of asking him if he wants to come and do the podcast. He's a filmmaker. He makes movies. He's a director and a writer. And his knowledge of film is just other worlds away from anything I had, and he'd done this quiz and it was like, wow, I really know nothing. It was a true education in how little I knew. So yeah, that was that sort of.
So I suppose my specialist subject then is random rubbish. Because I can come out with something that nobody else really needs to know, but I think it's quite exciting.
I think we all have that. I think this is probably the second time I'm going to relay the banana tree thing. Anytime bananas are mentioned, I relay the same piece of information, and I say, "Did you know that banana trees walk?" And everybody looks at you like you've got two heads. And then I say, when they plant banana trees, they plant a row and they leave a row, and they plant a row and they leave a row, because the way the roots are, it's as close to walking, and the roots just sort of like go across, and these trees move. And they'll plant them, and then a year later they'll be, a foot to the right,
space,
because the roots move. And every now and then I have to Google it, because when I relate it to people and they go, "Huh?" it makes me second guess that information. And at this point in time, I'm probably getting close to having to Google it again, because I've said it so many times recently. But yeah, that useless knowledge that that other people go, "What? What, is that real?" And then you go, "I think so." So that's your specialist subject, random knowledge.
I don't know enough about one major thing, so yes.
So, coming to the back end of the podcast, I like to end on a high note with a little bit of an entertainment thing. Now, what I will say is, one of my podcast guests, I like people to do an impression of something, and they can pick what that is. I throw out ideas and stuff. I think Leanne's told me that she's never doing an impression again, because we watched I Love You Man, and there's a bit in that where they're doing impressions to each other, and she was just like mortified watching it, going, "I'm never doing an impression again." So one person came and did an impression that was very good. One person came and just went, "I don't know any impressions." And I went, "I'm not going to push that situation." As was mentioned at the time, my mate Tom he's very nice, he's very lovable, but he's very big. He's huge. He's just this mountain of a man. And I wasn't going to push him on it. If he said, "I don't know any," that was that. So, do you know any impressions?
Do they have to be any type of an impression?
Anything. Generally, like your actors.
Right, okay.
I gave Leon the option to do an accent. Do you do any good accents?
Not particularly.
No.
But...
I thought you were learning...
Italian.
Italian.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit of Italian. But
can you do it in an Italian accent? Because that could tick a couple of boxes.
What, like... "You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off" in Italian? Oh no, because it was the Italian job.
It was the Italian job. So that's your impression.
That would be my impression.
Michael Caine impression.
Yeah, I am trying to learn Italian. I think it's a lovely language. I don't know why. It's supposed to be the language of love. Maybe that's why.
My granddad was fluent in German, self-taught. Well, I say self-taught. He had lessons, but he was very passionate about learning German. And then he started learning Spanish on top of learning German.
Ich sprechen eine kleine bisschen Deutsch. And I can say the alphabet in German.
I only know one bit of German, just because it was...
Ein Bier bitte.
Über die Brücke.
Over the
bridge.
Over the bridge.
Yeah. That's me in German. It's not like I learned it at school for 5 years or something. Okay, so you might not know this, but in the podcasting world, some people earn money from podcasting, and the way they do that is that it's like being sponsored. So a company will come to them and they will say, "We would like you to advertise our product, and off the back of that, we will pay you to do this." And I had this sort of idea that I might have stolen somewhere along the line. Anyway, if you were a regular guest on the podcast and then somebody, a company, said, "We want you to advertise our product." And there's this theory that advertisement's okay as long as you believe in the product. What would you be happy to advertise? What gets you? What if you get out of bed? What would you? If you'd be having a bad day if you hadn't had X item in your life. Leanne wanted to advertise bananas at one point because she couldn't get through the day without a banana. Sort of said I wouldn't know which company that would be. The banana company. I'll tell you what.
Positivity. How do you advertise positivity?
I will give you, because I've been, in fact, I've got a bottle here. I've been recently advertising Asda's still flavoured water. That's my advert. I go, Asda's still flavoured water. However, today, changing it up. So today, my advert for today is the AeroPress. I've used the AeroPress to make 4 cups of coffee today.
Oh, right, yeah.
So my AeroPress coffee maker is today's advert for me, and it is hands down the best coffee maker. It makes an amazing cup of coffee. So today I'm advertising the AeroPress coffee maker.
My NutriBullet would be...
I was going to say, I imagine your NutriBullet's going to be like that. So if NutriBullet came to you and said, not only are we going to pay you to advertise our products, we're going to give you a free one, you'd be happy to advertise the NutriBullet.
Yeah.
There we go. NutriBullet. So that brings us to the end. That's the end of our podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you very much for coming and doing the podcast.
And how long have we been on for?
Oh, you are now the podcast record holder.
And I was so afraid. I thought I wouldn't be able to speak.
I know, but at this point in time, because I've been really struggling with this, like I was saying, like, you can only ask people certain questions once. Like, if you say to somebody, what's your favourite film? And they go, my favourite film is this. You really can't ask that question again. And that's what I was saying. A mate of mine was like, yeah, of course you can, because it changes. And I was like, I'll explore that question. But I was starting to panic in this world of, how do I push the podcast forward? If I have the same people on, I can't ask them the same questions, so I'm going to have to ask new questions. Or I'm going to say, so this week this has happened in the news, let's say, let's talk about that sort of thing. But what I've realised is from doing this podcast with you, and like I say, you are now the podcast record holder, this is definitely going to be 2 podcasts. I'll have to do some quick editing somewhere along the line. What I've realised is that, as I kept saying throughout it, you and I could do a podcast on one subject alone. So I've already gone, right, we're going to do a Baby Driver podcast. We're going to do a vinyl podcast. We're going to do 70s music podcast. That's 3 podcasts right there. So, yeah.
And I think your friend is right. When it comes to films and music, you can have a different view, but somebody who's coming on maybe on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, whose beliefs keep changing from month to month, then you've got to have a little bit of doubt as to...
I was going to say, you think that person needs a cheeky slap, maybe, back of the hand.
But to change your view on a particular film or piece of music, because... And that's just my view, is because it's very mood orientated.
I realised off the back of that conversation that the way to do it is genre.
Yeah.
So you just say, name your 3 favourite horror movies, name your 3 favourite comedies, name your 3 favourite action movies. That can last, especially if you do it to each person. Like, Lan's a big horror movie fan, so the next time me and her sit down, I'm going to say, what's your 3 favourite horror movies? We already did her 3 supposed favourite films. Next time it'll be horror movies, the time after that action films and so on.
Within that, again, you've got the different actors, actresses, whatever, do they still call them actresses? That perform in these films, which are the favourite films that they've ever been in.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you can have a favourite actor and favourite actor in a favourite film, and yeah. So there we go.
Okay.
Podcast in the bank. Done. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Bye-bye. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Cookiecast. This is part 2 of my podcast with Donna Davies. This is a great little conversation. We got really into talking about vinyl, music, 70s music, the best music from the 70s. Had a great little conversation about diet and exercise. I'm pretty sure there's even a cheeky impression in there somewhere. So join me and have a listen to Donna Davies on Cookiecast Part 2.